The Arizona Cardinals of 2012 are a perfect example of a team that comes out of the gate and almost seems to find a way to win games that maybe they shouldn't before reality catches up with them very quickly. They started off 4-0, including beating teams like the New England Patriots, and they looked like they were going to be a contender at least in the NFC West. Then reality set in. They got terrible play from their quarterbacks, regardless of who was in or who was hurt. It didn't matter. Their offense couldn't move the ball, couldn't score points, and they finished the last 12 games of the season 1-11 to finish 5-11 and last in the NFC West, and are now holders of the 7th overall pick in this upcoming April's draft. Not surprisingly, major changes happened. Ken Wisenhunt was let go. You've got a house cleaning in the front office. You look at this team and how they played on the field in 2012, the majority of the problems really were, frankly, on the offensive side of the football. 31st in points, 32nd in total yards, 32nd in rushing yards. Their passing performance, far from spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. This is a team with quarterback issues, with an offensive line. As much as people want to talk about the Bears' offensive line being terrible, you want to talk about terrible offensive line, look at the Arizona Cardinals. And even if Levi Brown would have played the whole year, they still would have been a terrible offensive line. Defensively, they were kind of middle of the pack. They started off the very beginning of the season, the first 4 games, they looked strong. They looked like damn near a dominant defense, the type of defense that if they had an offense that could run the ball and limit mistakes, could keep the team competitive all year. But, just the offense was so damn bad that eventually it's hard for the defense, because they're on the field so much, to maintain a certain level of play. And as a result, the defense struggled at times throughout the rest of the season. Hence why you got the 5-11 record. Steve Klein was brought in to be the new GM, and the Arizona Cardinals have decided to go with another offensive mind. This time, the guy that helped lead the Colts to their 11-5 record this season, ultimately, Bruce Arians, offensive coordinator and temporary head coach in Indianapolis, is now the head man in charge. When you look at this team from a free agent standpoint, they really don't have a ton of what you would call big-time concerns or big-time players hitting the free agent market. You've got Larod Stevens Howling, it's a tongue twister. Guys like Greg Toller, a couple of okay players, but not guys that if they left you would be broken up and shed a tear about. But they have other questions too. What are they going to do with Adrian Wilson? What are they going to do with Larry Fitzgerald? And the reason I say this is Larry Fitzgerald's been there since 2004. And this is a team that clearly is in need of at least some rebuilding, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Do you want to see, if you're the Cardinals organization, Larry Fitzgerald kind of ride off the rest of his career on a crappy team and not be able to be the great player that he is? Or do you want to potentially explore what type of trade market there is for him, get him in a situation where he can be a better player, maybe send him to somebody in the AFC that needs a number 1 wide receiver, and get some value in return and really make a rebuilding effort out of this? There are some very important questions, obviously, for the Arizona Cardinals, and you want to understand why the Cardinals are bad. Ultimately, it's about not being able to, as Kurt Warner was reaching the end of his career, being able to effectively find a young quarterback that would step in and be his replacement. And their failure to draft him over the years in particular has really hurt him. In fact, the trade for Kevin Kolb obviously hasn't worked out either. But you look at their 5-year draft history, and this is a team that has had some successes. They've had some failures. Some of their successes include being able to find nice linebackers. At least I'll say nice linebackers. I think Darrell Washington's a stud. And they found other linebackers in the middle rounds of the draft like Sam Acko and O'Brien Schofield. Good players, not stars, but good players. They've had some success in terms of drafting defensive backs, in particular, obviously, Patrick Peterson. You could say go back to DRC back in, 2008, and you could say, well, he was a good draft choice, and he was for them at that time. Now he's Philadelphia's problem or somebody else's problem if they choose to sign him in free agency. And they've done an okay job with the defensive line, too, being able to find guys like Calais Campbell in the 2nd round and Dan Williams, who's at least an okay or a semi-effective nose tackle in the Cardinals' 3-4 defensive scheme. The biggest thing that stand out to me over the past 5 years for the Arizona Cardinals drafting philosophy is their failure, like I mentioned a little bit ago, to effectively address the quarterback position via the draft. And running back, too. This is a position that doesn't get nearly enough focus. They spent first-round picks on Beanie Wells, second-round picks on Ryan Williams, and they haven't gotten a whole lot of production out of the running game. 32nd in the league in rushing yards. It's a combination of ineffective play, and more importantly, these guys just flat out can't stay healthy, especially in the case of Ryan Williams. But the biggest failures of all come on the offensive line. And over the past 5 years, they really haven't done a lot to address their gaping voids on the offensive line, and their offensive line is terrible as a result. Isn't it amazing if you don't invest draft picks into a certain area of your team, at some point in time it becomes the biggest, most glaring weakness that you have? That's the case for teams like my Chicago Bears, and that is definitely the case for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, when it comes to the free agency and draft approach for the Arizona Cardinals this offseason, I would expect a lot of the emphasis to, appropriately so, be placed on the offensive side of the football. I'd be very surprised if the Arizona Cardinals weren't big players potentially in the Jake Long sweepstakes or maybe the Brandon Albert sweepstakes. And even if they do sign a big-name left tackle to help improve their offensive line that dramatically needs the improvement, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them still spend a first-round pick on the offensive line, whether that be a guy. I would expect Jokel to not be there, but maybe a guy, if he shot up the draft boards again, like Eric Fisher of Central Michigan, or maybe Jokel's teammate Matthews from Texas A&M, or hell, if you're looking at maybe the best all-around offensive lineman in the draft at that point in time, could very well be Chance Warmack, the guard from Alabama, to the point where they may think he's athletic enough to play left tackle, or they think they have a dominant all-pro left guard for many years, and you pair that with a big free agent signing at left tackle, and you've made some significant upgrades to your offensive line. Now, with a new head coach and a new GM, you also could be of the opinion that the Arizona Cardinals are definitely going to attempt to address the quarterback position in the offseason, and I think they will. Whether that'll come via free agency or trade, trying to bring in somebody like, whether it be a Matt Flynn or an Alex Smith or what have you, or potentially looking at that guy in the first round with a guy like maybe Geno Smith if he's there, Mike Glennon from NC State, maybe a Tyler Wilson from Arkansas, or if they go in the second round approach, if they think they like a Matt Barkley, or if a Ryan Nassib from Syracuse is there. I would expect that these glaring holes, both in the offensive line and at the quarterback position, will be addressed by this Arizona Cardinals team in some compilation between the free agency and the NFL draft. Now, there are other needs they could potentially address in the draft. They may want to explore getting a more consistent running back that could stay healthy, but you could find that guy maybe in the third, fourth, fifth round, similar to what the Colts ended up finding out with Vic Ballard, a fifth-round pick this year. Somebody, again, that Bruce Arians, the offensive coordinator and temporary head coach there, is very familiar with. They could be looking also in this draft at some point in time to draft a more explosive outside pass rusher if they decide to stick with their 3-4 defense. A lot of questions for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is a team that, if they effectively address their offensive line problems, or at least get on the right path to doing so, and they find a better answer at quarterback, this is a team that in 2013 could surprise some people because their defense isn't terrible, and they have nice weapons on the outside in Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd. It's a team that could jump up and surprise some people, especially under the leadership of Bruce Arians on the offensive side of the football, but I won't crown their asses yet. I've got to see what they do in the offseason first.